If you were to walk through the streets of New York City during the First World War, you would see a city in the middle of a massive, restless transformation. The old social hierarchies were being shaken by the war effort, and the roles people played, especially women, were shifting almost overnight. Sewell Ford's Torchy and Vee captures this specific, buzzing energy through the eyes of Torchy, a woman who is less of a traditional heroine and more of a professional fixer. She works in the corrugated trust office, and she has a knack for navigating the messy, complicated realities of human behavior. Torchy isn't just a witness to these changes, she is the glue holding various lives together. She's resourceful, intuitive, and possesses a practical intelligence that allows her to see through the performances people put on for society. The book itself isn't a single driving novel with one central conflict, but rather a series of interconnected vignettes. It's a tapestry of lives in transition, and through Torchy we see how people use masks of class, of gender, and of personality to survive or to climb. One of the first major threads we see is the transformation of Marion Gray. At the start, Marion is the picture of vulnerability, a woman facing poverty and uncertainty after the death of her father. She's stuck in that old-fashioned role of the dependent, waiting for life to happen to her. But then she meets Vee, Torchy's proactive and entrepreneurial friend. Vee doesn't just offer sympathy, she offers a way out through business. Together, they help Marion launch the Harbour Hills Community Kitchen Co., a meal delivery service. By the end of this arc, Marion has evolved from a timid, struggling woman into a confident businesswoman. It's a perfect example of how the wartime era provided new, practical avenues for women to claim their own agency. Torchy's own competence is established through her work for her boss, a powerful man known as Old Hickory Ellens. He's a man of immense influence who operates in the shadows of business and military logistics, and he relies on Torchy to handle the things that require a delicate touch or a sharp mind. In one memorable episode, Torchy proves her logistical brilliance during a bet. She manages to retrieve 5 massive, heavy spools of telephone wire from a construction site, a feat that requires more than just muscle. It requires timing and a sense of how to move through a chaotic environment. While this earns her massive respect from the men in the office, it also highlights a frustrating reality of the time. Because she is so good at managing the domestic and logistical details of the office, she is kept in a vital, stable role rather than being sent to the front lines. She becomes the backbone of the home front, which is a theme Ford explores deeply. As the war progresses, the focus shifts toward the high-stakes world of wartime espionage and community action. We see that the front line isn't just a place in Europe, it's also the barbershops and street corners of New York. Torchy finds herself involved in an investigation into a local barbershop suspected of being a spy drop point. This isn't a spy thriller in the cinematic sense, but it's a gritty, grounded look at how information moves. She uncovers a corrupt police officer and a clever, hollow barber pole used for smuggling coded documents. It's a reminder that even in a bustling city, there are hidden layers of deception operating right under people's noses. Yet, amidst this tension, there is also a sense of unity. Torchy helps organize a massive community block party to honor the soldiers. In these scenes, the book shows how the diverse immigrant groups of New York begin to knit themselves together under the symbol of the service flag. There is a shared purpose that temporarily overrides the social divisions that usually define the city. As we move through these vignettes, we start to see the recurring theme of the mask. People in this book are almost always performing something. Take Mame Stribble, for instance. To escape the crushing weight of poverty, Mame uses a shop window display to perform a vamp persona. She creates a character that people want to see, using a costume to navigate a world that would otherwise ignore her. Then there is Ernie Sudders, a rigid and socially awkward auditor. Ernie is a man who struggles to read the world as it actually is, so he constructs a fantasy to protect himself. He becomes convinced he had a whirlwind, passionate romance with a woman, only to discover later that she was actually a patient from a mental institution. For Ernie, the delusion is more comfortable than the reality, and Torchy watches this play out with a mix of pity and understanding. We see this performance of class everywhere. There is the character of Lucy Snell, who decides to flee the suffocating pressures of high society marriage. She finds that the constant effort required to perform resort life, the endless social calls, the rigid etiquette, the maintenance of a specific polished image is simply too taxing. She chooses to walk away from the prestige because the mask is too heavy to wear. But not everyone is trying to escape a high status. Some are trying to manufacture it. One of the most biting pieces of social commentary in the book comes when Torchy uncovers the facade of Lucy Lee. Lucy Lee presents herself as a woman of simple tastes and modest means, a persona designed to attract wealthy men who want a wife who won't challenge their lifestyle. In reality, her simplicity is an incredibly expensive, highly manufactured performance. Every detail of her life is curated to create an illusion of authenticity that is, in itself, a very expensive artifice. The book also isn't afraid to lean into the absurd. There is a chaotic, almost surreal episode involving a failed poultry venture. In a scene that serves as a comedic peak, a group of people attempts to pluck turkeys while intoxicated, leading to a ridiculous situation where the birds are forced to wear makeshift quilted jackets. It's a moment of pure, messy human error that breaks up the more serious themes of espionage and social climbing, showing that even in a world at war, life remains fundamentally chaotic and often quite silly. As the narrative nears its conclusion, the stories move away from the grander social movements and back toward the intimate personal lessons that Torchy facilitates. The book's resolution is less about a grand climax and more about the process of maturing, of learning to see through the illusions we create for ourselves and others. Torchy finds herself acting as a guide for the younger generation, specifically a naive office boy named Vincent. Vincent is a young man who is easily dazzled by superficiality. He is on the verge of entering into a disastrous marriage with a woman who is essentially a professional flirt, someone whose entire personality is a series of practiced gestures. Torchy, using her characteristic indirectness, orchestrates a meeting that forces Vincent to see the woman's true nature. She doesn't lecture him. She simply creates a situation where the mask slips, allowing him to see the reality of the person behind the charm. Through this, Vincent undergoes a rite of passage, moving from the delusions of youth toward a more grounded, adult understanding of relationships. By the end, the book leaves us with a sense of a world in flux. The characters are all in some state of transition. The war has acted as a catalyst, forcing people out of their old roles and into new, often uncomfortable identities. The women are finding agency in business and logistics, the social classes are blurring and reforming, and individuals are learning that the masks they wear, whether to hide poverty, to attract wealth, or to protect their egos, eventually have to be set aside to face the reality of their lives. When we look at the book as a whole, the main takeaway isn't a single moral lesson, but an observation of human nature. Sewell Ford uses Torchy as a lens to show us that life is often a series of performances. We see people performing gender, performing class, and performing even our own identities. But the fixer in Torchy knows that while these performances might help us navigate a difficult social landscape, they can also prevent us from truly connecting with others or with ourselves. The resolution of the book is a quiet one. It doesn't end with a massive victory or a tragic downfall, but with a sense of clarity. The characters have learned to distinguish between the spectacle and the substance. They have learned that while the home front is just as vital as the front lines, and while the social dances of New York are complex and often deceptive, the reality of a person's character is what ultimately determines their path. In the end, Torchy and Vee is a study of the tension between what we show the world and who we actually are. It's a book about the effort it takes to live in a world that is constantly changing, and the intelligence required to keep one's footing when the ground is shifting beneath you. Torchy herself remains the steady, observant centre of this storm, a woman who understands that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply see things for what they truly are.